Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 6th, and it is now 1:30, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Goldberg.
Here.
Commissioner Peters.
Present.
Commissioner David.
Present.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Present.
Mayor Moore.
Present.
Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
And Town Attorney Rubin.
Present.
We could all rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
No.
If no changes, if we could have a motion?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We have no presentations or proclamations. Any public comments? Seeing no public comments, moving on to ordinances. We have ordinance number 2024-002. It's a second reading, and this is a public hearing. An ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending Article 4 Floodplain Management of Chapter 20, Planning and Development of the Town Code of Ordinances to update the date of the flood insurance study and flood insurance maps, adopt a requirement for the accumulation of the cost of improvements over a 5-year period, and provide for general updates for the town's continued participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, providing for a fiscal impact statement, providing for applicability, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date. And we had our first reading at our last meeting on July 23rd, 2024. So do we have any discussion? I think the only change was a change to that look back period,
Yeah,
which
look back
was
period changed from 3 to 5.
3 to 5 years.
Mr. Remus.
To me,
Is there
it looked like,
You're right in time.
Do you want to, is there anything you want to say about the flood?
Yeah.
you almost missed it.
I know.
I have nothing unless you have questions. It's been changed to the 5-year look back period and everything else looks good. That's it.
Any discussion?
No.
I
Any-
was curious, I think we had questioned it, but I didn't know if there was any further update on it. At what period of time, when will we know whether or not, what impact it will have on our tax base? On our
Taxes.
resident
Here, yeah.
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 So
taxes.
so the
Not
discount will be,
Insurance.
Insurance
Insurance.
costs, yeah, not
I
taxes.
stand correct.
yes. So participating in a CRS, it gives a rating from basically 1 to 10. And for every 1 point that you go down from 10, 9 is a 5% discount. 8 is a 10% discount, and it just goes in increments
Okay.
up to 45%. Okay. We'll know once we are back into the CRS. The first step is I have to submit, regardless of participation in the CRS, I have to submit this ordinance back to FEMA
Mhm.
for them to do a final review and
Mhm.
accept it or deny it, which they're the ones who put this together. So I'm sure they're going to accept it. But once we are participating, it's going to be at least a year, because once we start participation and then we go through the ISO and we have to do reporting, then so it probably won't pay dividends actually for about 2 years.
All right. Thank you.
2 years.
So I'll open it up as a public hearing. Any public comments on this? Seeing no comments, I close the hearing. I guess we're ready for a motion. Yes. Okay.
I move we accept ordinance number 2024-002 on the second reading.
Seconded.
Commissioner David.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Peters.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Yes.
And Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the consent agenda. Any discussion or concerns over the consent agenda? If none, if we
No.
could have a motion, please.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to unfinished business, sanitary sewer lining rehabilitation project update.
Yes, so speaking with Pat and Sergio, they basically met with a contractor that's going to give us options under the Omni Group, which is a national federal procurement agency that they'll basically give us pricing for multiple contractors that are pre-selected by the federal government and the state. So it makes it possible for us to continue piggybacking. And then we're also contacting a vendor that does plantation and seeing if they're willing to extend plantation prices. And once we get that, we'll see what the pricing is, and then we'll meet with our engineers and kind of finalize what our next steps are to bring to you on a strategy for completing the project. Speaking with Pat, he seems liking the idea of getting the side streets first, because FDOT's probably going to drag its feet getting us anything or approvals in the right of way. So at least we could handle a big portion of the project now, and then as we work through FDOT, see what that next part could look like. So I'd say over the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a little more idea on pricing. Most of it's done per linear foot based on the pipe size. So you imagine larger pipes, costs increase per linear foot. So we're going to see what that looks like, what that budget is, so we can start sharing the budget numbers with you. That the project, we got authorization for $3.5 million. I think we'll be well within that number, but we'll see where that really pencils out. And what the contractor's recommendations and our engineers' recommendations on how to tackle the project. So full steam ahead. Hopefully we'll have, we're going to move through what we call the piggybacking or cooperative purchasing option under our purchasing policy and state statute. That'll allow us to basically work on somebody else's bid. So we're going to hopefully get those locked down here next week.
Marshall, on some of the lines that go underneath A1A, east and west, wouldn't that be the priority maybe to go under before they build the road? Because I think they would be upset if we start digging up their new road,
So
checking the lines.
Pat's talking with the company that's doing testing aligning on, we had a little bit of a problem or break here by Regency where they can line it. So we're going to see how that works. We hired them to fix that problem for us. Now we have a lateral problem. So Pat's kind of put them on a little bit of a trial to see how that would work with lining an existing lateral across and see across the streets to see how that would look and work. Because then we're doing without digging. That's ideal. Otherwise you do bore and jack. It could be difficult because of depths, but if we can line existing, that would be marvelous. So we're testing it right now. That work should be done over the next few days. We'll see what it looks like, how it went. We didn't know if they could line smaller laterals. We thought we had to dig them out. So this is good news if they can line those. So we'll find out, and that would be the idea. But you're right. Laterals could be the biggest problem to the road infrastructure. But if we can line them, we're going to really minimize that and mostly be in right-of-way impacts, which are fine, landscaping, grass areas. So that's what we're looking at. But you're right. We want to do all of it. It's just Pat believes there's a big reluctance for FDOT into the right-of-way. Because somebody, like I think one of the utility companies was doing some boring and FDOT kicked them out of the right of way. Not that they would kick us out, but I think they're holding a strong position. They don't want a lot of right of way work while they're coming through because they might get blamed for the damage while they're working. So, but we'll have more each meeting incrementally. We'll have a lot more, but I think we'll have a budget and then a plan of attack for you all to react to say, like it, don't like it, move in this direction. So our next meeting, we'll have a little more productive talk on cost and direction. You can give some more guidance to us to how you want to do it.
And I think we've talked about it before, but the lining has like a 50-year life expectancy, right? I mean,
It's
it's
like new
like, it's
pipe.
like new pipe. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's just as good,
Mhm.
whatever. Any public comments on this item? No? Okay, if there are no additional comments, we can move on to the Florida Department of Transportation RRR update.
I haven't heard much, Chief. I don't know if you've gotten anything. I mean, they've hit a couple gas lines along the way, so we bought some specialized equipment to assist. That's because when the gas lines were put in, they're not consistently on a grade, and they don't know how deep. So they basically, the contractor said we're going to be hitting it a few more times. So we're prepared to handle that. Otherwise, they're moving quite slowly. I have a question. Some comments, people really are trying to understand how they're moving along, where they're going next. They seem to be jumping around.
Mhm.
They start at one spot, then they go a quarter of a mile down and they go into another spot. So there doesn't appear, I'm sure there is rhyme or reason, but as far as what their game plan is, can we get some kind of an understanding of,
Well, we'll reach out to them and see if they have a more of a written scope or plan. Because you're right, it does look pretty haphazard at times. They'll be working in the right of way in one location and up in another. Working with their irrigation folks too. So I'll reach out to them, see if I can get more of a game, what their game plan is, what they plan, their work methodology, if you will, their sequence of tasks.
Mhm.
And maybe that'll give us a little more insights. But you're right, it looks a little bit more haphazard at the moment.
on the positive side, they seem to have it well under control, the stoppage of traffic and moving. I'm not aware of any major delays at all. They seem to be doing extremely well.
Yeah, just when they hit a gas man, it does back up a bit. Outside of that, though, you're right. It seems to be moving. We'll see when everyone comes home, come November, we'll see
Right.
what that looks like. But hopefully they'll be practiced by then and you all can guide your neighbors what to expect when they get here.
Well, one of the concerns is around Linton Boulevard, because especially as it gets busier and they haven't seemed to have touched that area, that's going to be a real area of traffic congestion. So it'd be interesting to know what the game plan is then.
I would guess they're, do you have something, Pat, on FDOT? Okay. Okay.
Here's the way they're jumping around.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're going several hundred feet on the east side, and then they're jumping back on the west side and going back that way. So they're gonna constantly go a couple hundred
Okay.
feet on this side, jump across the road and come back to where they started. And they're gonna strategically do this that way.
Just the right of way work, then just on the drain. Yeah.
Just right away.
It sounds right. It doesn't appear that way, but it sounds right.
Technical, a little bit inconsistent, but they are doing what they said they were gonna do. They're doing just like it.
So they indicate, the vice mayor made a good point. When are they gonna start tackling that intersection? Right at high season, maybe? Going, yeah.
You know, they want to get all the drainage out of the way before they start any other work, so. However long it takes them to get down here through the end of town, which you're probably right, it's gonna be probably the worst time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually how it works. It's out there for it. It'll be worth the wait.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Any public comments? Okay, seeing no further discussion, we can move on to new business, resolution number 2024-018. A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, adopting a merit increase policy for non-union employees and amending the Town of Highland Beach salary table and providing for an effective date.
So this mirrors last year's resolution. Sometimes I call it a salary warrant, but it's the resolution for the merit increase. The second part is the CPI. Seems to be what we've liked to done in the direction you've all given me is to tie it to CPI. So that's the salary table itself, kind of the bands, the low salary for each band to the midpoint to the high. We'll adjust at CPI, and that's very similar to what we did with the PBA contract. For the police officers is we kind of do that on a year-to-year basis. You adjust the tables at inflation. So this, again, last year, that number was like 7% because it was, I'm guessing we're back into the 3s, could be high 2s based on the CPI as we're seeing it track a little bit. And some of the noise with the recession, you're probably going to see inflation kind of push down a bit here over the next, 3 to 8 months. So, but again, it's consistent. We can afford, I work with David, the numbers, we can make it work. No substantive change to anything in the budget. It's consistent with adjacent communities. They're all within different ranges and different solutions to for non-union employees.
So this is embedded within the budget that was presented to us.
Yep, it's all in there. There's no budget amendment, no changes. I don't have to tweak any numbers. It all fits in there.
Any discussion?
This is pretty standard. We do this every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
again,
I mean, it's budget season and this is what we do in budget season.
And
so
it's important to
it's-
compensate employees, to keep the valued staff here. So we have to keep up with, appropriate salaries. So.
Yep, and it's those people over there in the corner, mostly. That's who you're talking about. The department heads, police and fire chief, supervisors, confidential employees, clerk. That's this group. So everybody in the room you see here, that's an employee. This is related to.
And we thank you for your service, your excellent service. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And this is consistent with the union increases, the union contracts? Are they the same?
Somewhat, it's a little bit higher than the union, but
Little
they choose to go through 3 years. So, some years were less than union, other years were a little bit more. Your leadership staff, your executive staff goes with the budget. So when I say that is if it's a tougher year, they buckle down first, kind of lead the way. And when better times, they do a little bit better than the running average. And that's consistent with the numbers are playing out a little bit better. So it is a little bit higher than the union. And I wouldn't say the police or fire, but the other employee unions a little bit better.
Okay.
But again, that employee union is getting the table, their salaries are in the salary tables are tied to this as well. So it does affect the non-public safety union does get the adjustment in the salary table. So they get half of this kind of change.
Wait, explain that again.
So folks that I'll use the water plant operators, their salaries for water operator A, B, and C are listed in our salary tables. This will adjust all of the salary positions. The only ones that are not mentioned in our salary table are firefighter, paramedics, and captains, the line crew, and then police officers, because they're covered by their own independent
Right.
contracts or salary tables, the salary tables that we established for the fire. But everybody else in the union, not in the union, this adjusts, this kind of keeps our pay bands and pay ranges for all classifications of employee on pace with the area. Now, we've been doing a really good job over the last 5 years of getting that. It was kind of ignored for like 12 years, 13 years. We started bringing it back up. So we're not the lowest paid agency or municipality around. So we're trying to get ourselves at least into that first quartile. I've heard some commissioners over there say it should be closer to average. So we're kind of in that range depending on the position, if you will.
And this is just how you keep good employees.
Right. You want to make sure that you're not paying them 30% what they could get in a similarly situated community, right? So that we wanted to be the preferred employer. I can still hear Doug always mentioning that, to be the preferred employer. If you have an option and you want to work in municipalities, we should be on the table and in consideration when we need, a building official or a finance director or public works, or we should be in that. We could draw similar quality individuals. So this allows us to do that and stay on par with the rate of inflation. We're not going beyond it, but we're at least keeping up instead of falling, which we had for a long time, falling way behind. So.
So where do we stand now, would you say? You think we're still in the first quartile or are we
We're
approaching?
mostly in the first
Are we
quartile.
approaching?
There's a few positions that are a little bit better off, just how they ever got initially banded or graded. In civil service, we call it grading of positions, right? So you look at skill sets, background necessary, responsibilities, and you grade that position out. So in that civil service environment, we will compare ourselves to, again, I always say you can't really compare yourself to Boca. Boca really pushes the needle, right? So we could look at Del Rey's, Hillsborough Beach, Palm Beach, Manalapan. We should be in the game with those smaller cities or coastal communities. So everybody will have a police officer, and that's how we did for the PBA. Are we in the range? For so long, we were chasing it, right? We'd always be like, of all the agencies of similarly sized communities, we would be like 8, 9, 10. We're at the bottom of the pay. And we all made that commitment, or at least you gave me the direction to move that. So we've moved ourselves to kind of be competitive in the top 3 or 4 agencies of similar sized communities. We should be in there. So every year I go through and look at the state has a HR agency and they do a salary survey. Or anytime the managers group here in the county are pretty good at when somebody commissions a salary study, they will provide it to each of us and it kind of pushes the needle, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, but at the same time, make sure that we're in the right range when we pay folks, right? We have a couple positions that will fall out of the first quartile, I believe, shortly. Some are a little bit above, some are closer to average. So we're kind of in that range. We're slowly working. I try to keep everybody in that first quartile, right? Not the second quartile, third, or the highest paid. We're still at the bottom, but at least we're in the bottom state. And it's mostly South Florida. I think Tampa to West Palm South. We kind of stay in that comparative analysis for positions, right? Want to make sure we're in that range, and we're in the first quartile.
And so after the 6.5, it doesn't move the needle. We're still.
6.5. Well, this is so gives David something to do every year. So what happens is when, some of our people in positions have topped what they call the top out, right? Because of the banding, you can only get paid up to the band. So we pay beyond the band, but each year it gets reset, right? Before you get your merit increase on it. So if we adjust this. So say this is a 3% salary adjustment. You're a topped out employee. Well, your salary moves half of it. The other 3.5%, you'll be over your top out. So next year, when David starts the budget, he brings your salary back to whatever the max of the salary table, and then you repeat. So
what function does this additional amount that you have the 6.5% and 0.5% for a merit increase?
that's 6.5.
It's 6.5, that's the half.
Right.
Yeah. So 6.5 is the
And-
merit increase for
That's just
satisfactory.
you written it off. You
Yep.
wrote it out.
The salary table, no one gets
Just
paid that amount. It
6.5.
just makes sure the banding of the position is growing with the rate of inflation. So we're not losing that first quartile. We got everybody there. If we stop doing the CPI adjustment, we start falling quickly, right? Because everybody's going to start moving at 3 to 5% on their bands, and then we're chasing again. So we got ourselves there. Now we just want to keep on
Right.
point with everybody. Occasionally we'll lose, or a position, certain types of positions grow faster than others.
Mhm.
And then those are where we have to make other alternate adjustments if we find ourselves in a bad spot where we're grossly underpaying a position. We might lose talent or the right person. We shouldn't do that. At least get them into that first quartile, right? So when we do that or movement, it's not exotic. We're not like, splashing the pot or putting you guys in any type of potential public scrutiny. You're just staying in the first quartile. We're not staying in the second quartile. We're first, like the bottom tier of pay is where is our mark at this point. There'll be some in the community that believe, well, there's probably some that say you should just depress it, but I don't know if I believe in that. This otherwise, we should be paying in that average range versus the first quartile. And that's usually about 6 to 8% higher for the salary bands, not what the person makes at this point, but that position in the area, where should we be paying those?
Yeah, so to put it another way, 75% of the other people are making more. So out of 100 people, 75 are making more. So, I don't think anybody's arguing, I think we're all, I don't know, I'm used to when I was in corporate, there was no inflation and we were getting 3% increases. So I don't know, someone might say, 6.5 is a lot, but it's really not a lot because you're at the first percentile, which means you're only 25% or less are getting paid as much or more, compared
to your counterpart
Right.
in other
Yeah, so
municipalities.
75 out of 100 are getting paid more. So we are not overly generous at all, I guess is what, we are very modest, correct?
We love you all,
So,
3 hugs after.
I want to make sure we keep with increases for sure where warranted. I guess my other question is, how does the 6.5 compare to is this better than some of the others? Do you know?
I
Like,
think
what are some of the other?
we're going to be on point or just a touch higher than the county. The county was a little bit higher last year. I think they did 7, we did 6.5. This year, I think the county is going to be at 6. There's some municipalities that are 7, maybe 8, but there's some that are also at 5. kind of that standard 5 that you hear a lot about. So,
Right, five
we're-
is like what,
and then there's other places, not to, Manalapan prefers cash payments versus sometimes a percentage increase. So they'll do, you get 5% and $5,000. So how do you, it's hard to math, probably moves that into the 6.5%, 7%, but they do, I think for budgetary cash flow purposes, they do a cash payment. Sometimes you, but in the state of Florida, you can't do bonuses retroactively. So you have to do it as a forward, like we did, remember with the COVID bonuses, it's kind of awkward in the state of Florida. So you can only do it, in a structured forward way. Conversations we'll have, as it relates to, public safety, especially police. We have another hurdle that we'll start talking about in our one-on-one meetings, annual meetings, that we have a big push there a little bit where we're falling off the mark for our police department compared to others. There's a movement that we're going to either be on point with, or we're going to find ourselves well behind. That would be when we see these, again, our sweet spot is second career officers. I don't know if Chief would agree, but that tends to be our sweet spot. With that though, they do retire. So we got to find the next group. And if we're markedly behind these other police agencies, if you could work here, Chief Hartman, everybody wants to work for him, but you could go to a Manalapan once they start moving forward with some of this, or Gulfstream. And next thing you know, we're not the preferred police department, which is not something we want. And that's why Jason's sitting in the front, because he's going to help here. So, and get the foundation involved in the greater community outreach. So, we don't want to fall behind. So there's a bigger lift
definitely.
forward looking that we're going to have to talk about off budget. We can afford it. It's nothing that you don't have to raise taxes. You don't have to do, but it's a commitment. And those are things that we'll have on our one-on-ones, what that commitment look like. That way you can go one-on-one with me and say, that's crazy. That's too much, not enough, whatever that is. We can have those in one-on-ones. And then when we come back, our discussions will be a little bit more structured and see if it can happen.
So separate and apart from the level, the 6.5% is to be competitive.
Right.
Yeah.
In the category. So
Right.
that's very important.
Mhm.
So whether it's 6.5 or 7, we have to remain competitive.
Correct.
We do. And again, it's the whole range. It doesn't mean everybody
Right.
comes in at the top
Right,
of that
right.
range,
Right,
but that range has to be. So if you're out, and I'll just pick on Pat today. So if you're not looking for a public works director, even though ours are next in line is already here, you can't, we can't go recruit a public works director that's paid 30-40% less than public works in another town that requires the same skill sets and talents. We're never going to find anybody.
Right.
right.
So we got to make sure we're close, and then we lure them in with Highland Beach and our residents and our beautiful environment and great work environment when you're here. But we got to be, before they even come to see it, you got to be close so they can get in the door, and then we can lure them the rest of the way in. So.
Working atmosphere is going to be role.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is probably why we're able to keep positions filled, even though, so I guess,
Well, if you ask any of them, they'll probably say they're underpaid, but
right, everybody,
But-
yeah, sure.
but the work environment, look how the smiles on their face. They're having a good time. They like it here. Yeah.
Well, I'm in,
I was here with Foundation, it's the 75th anniversary and his 75th work anniversary.
You're going to get money back.
Right. So I just want to make sure when we do this, it keeps us on point, keeps us competitive with other communities and our salaries from falling behind. But again, I'm only marking that first quartile on this study. I know that a couple other communities are going to commission some bigger studies, which will be good for us. And we can kind of see, where we're at, because again, you can go somewhere in North Central Florida. Yeah. We can't pay that and live in South Florida. So
Right.
this is good that we've now indexed it to the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm inflation rate. So people that are living here, we're on the same scale of how things change and the costs.
that sounds good. And is there any, like going forward, could you include documentation on where we fall in the quartile or
Sure, I can
whatever?
give you a
just so
report
we
back.
can
I will
see?
do that for you. I will, at first blush, I will send you something for select positions. Because if you go through every single one, sometimes we'll call a position X and another community calls it Y.
Mhm.
Right? And I'll pick on Madison for the moment, right? The new one, see how uncomfortable I can make her. So we hired an executive assistant, right? Well, some communities call it an assistant to the town manager or executive secretary. It's the same position.
Right.
You know, so I kind of do my best to kind of mark what that kind of grouping is and go from there. So I'll pick a handful of positions just so you can see. I'll pick ones that are, you know, on point, and I can show you ones that are a little bit off, and then we could see where we fall. But I follow the study every year. Every time something comes through, you know, I sense that we underpay a few positions, but then we have to then look at our other part of our benefit packages.
Right.
And I wouldn't
Clear.
underestimate the value and the cost of
Absolutely.
healthcare.
Right.
We've made that
Absolutely.
commitment to our employees.
Absolutely.
A lot of places make you pay premiums, or at least not for the employee, then it's for the whole family. We don't. And that's a great,
Definitely.
and you guys have allowed us to continue moving forward with a good product from the Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we have a really reputable option with acceptable co-pays and deductibles. So that is very attractive too. So when I say first quartile, I mean, if you started packing all the other things, maybe we move up a touch because
Right.
other communities don't do that.
Right.
So it's kind of that balancing act a bit.
So I'm good with the 6.5 this year and all that. Going forward, could you provide more of
Absolutely.
that documentation? Because I think that would help us, because like the 6.5, you know, I kind of rationalize it with, you know, what inflation's been, you know, that makes sense to me. But, you know, going forward, it might help us, you know, get comfortable with that percentage increase if we knew what percentile we fit in, or, you know, how we compare.
Sure, and I'll
know.
send you some more articles as they come available too,
Yeah.
to see where everybody else at. And we started this conversation, I'm seeing it come more to fruition outside of it. But I said, once we bring in fire and become a full service community, we're gonna have an upward pressure on positions.
Right.
Just because there's more people looking and the more growth, and, you know, we go from, you know, 50 employees, you know, whatever, it was 62 to 95, we've grown. We've made a big substantial step. And everybody's like, the pressure is going to come up a little bit. But what you also see is the cost of living metric, sometimes not always measured cleanly in CPI, rent cost or insurance, groceries, going to take your family out to dinner. Things have gone up, and it's markedly so more in Miami, but it hasn't, you know, we're a little bit better than Miami in cost, but not that much better. So that whole pressure, and I see a lot of town managers and other, you know, councils are kind of wrestling with that. Like, the cost of living in South Florida continues to move upward. We can't hope and pray that it doesn't. It's going up. You know, again, a recession, does it cool it? I just don't know how much it cools it here, right? It's a different environment for us here. So, but a lot of municipalities are going through that this year. Salary studies, where do they mark on different things? Police agencies are getting really competitive amongst themselves. Makes Chief Hartman very nervous. So, and I mean, it's true. I mean, we had what, over 100 applicants. We found 2, right? So, and we have more in the future vacancies as people, like I said, the second career folks, they're going to work here for 10, 15 years, but then they too leave at some point. And the next wave, how do we attract and keep them if all these other agencies either offer the same or more on certain levels? So we're going to be spending a little bit more time working on that. And I think, you know, getting you guys some more information, maybe we have quarterly conversations on that. And when those become available, to share those. I can share the PEPI study with you. It's this huge spreadsheet, and you can poke around through it and see what you think. And again, I kind of, you know, look at South Florida people and see where that is. But
Yeah, I think those summaries that just kind of shows how we rank is
Yeah.
what I need anyway.
so I'll communicate. Well, I'll pick a handful of, you know, communities, some here, some maybe other side, and you can kind of see where they're paying the same position. You can kind of get an idea.
Right. Yeah, that helps.
Mhm.
I think that
Okay.
helps. Any other?
No, I'm fine with the 6.5%.
Yeah, me too.
Sure.
In that case, I move that we adopt resolution number 2024-018.
Seconded.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Yes.
and Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item B, resolution number 2024-019. A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, designating procedures for code enforcement actions initiated by the town, providing for assignment of the code enforcement cases between the Code Enforcement Board and the Special Magistrate, designating the role of the town attorney, providing for the appointment and training of the Code Enforcement Board, and providing for an effective date.
So this is a follow-up from the commission's discussion at the last meeting regarding how we were going to handle having both a board and a magistrate. So I'll walk you through the resolution. Section 2 basically divides them in the manner that we discussed before, that Class 1, Class 2 will go to the board, and Class 3 will go to the magistrate. All the violations are delineated in the resolution. I can go through them, but basically the ones that are going to go to the magistrate, work without a permit, construction site standards code, zoning regulations, business tax receipts, prohibited or unsafe signs, cease and desist or stop work orders, fire code violations, and repeat violations. So essentially your more serious or egregious violations will go to the magistrate and the others will go to the board. We did talk about last time, scheduling might get a little difficult, with make sure we have a quorum with the board, make sure the magistrate's available. So while we will attempt to assign them the way they're assigned in the resolution, if we're unable to get a quorum or the magistrate has a conflict or something else doesn't work, it can go to one or the other. So we're covered that way. I did add, we didn't really talk about this, but requests to foreclose code enforcement liens, I had them go to the magistrate. So if a code enforcement lien remains unpaid for 3 months, the town can seek authorization to foreclose. We'll have those go to the magistrate. I just figuring we were doing procedures. So generally now the town attorney is the legal advisor of the board at the code enforcement board meetings. But once you have a magistrate, the magistrate ostensibly has that legal knowledge. So the town attorney can assist in presenting the cases. And which will help when you have a little more serious cases than we've had before. And also I know the commission was concerned about training. So I delineated all the things. Well, on an annual basis, we'll go through training, go through all the procedures, the statutes, they are quasi-judicial proceedings. So there's some evidentiary standards and, they're supposed to be impartial decision makers and disclose any ex parte communications. And a little ethics training, even though I know everyone has to do the county ethics training, it never hurts to have a little refresher on that kind of stuff. And then public records and government in the sunshine, which always fun. And then the last thing we did, or the commission talked about, was we do have in the code that the persons on the board should be from various disciplines or occupations. So they're listed out in the resolution. Again, though, if, all you can do is make your best efforts because you might not get somebody who's applying from all those different occupations. So, if you don't receive them, then it's okay to appoint somebody else. And, I made sure to include that it didn't invalidate any decisions by the board. So if there's anything else that you think should be included or you think I missed, or there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Did you get any feedback? Say, I noticed no one is here from the chair of the board or the board. Have we got any feedback from the board itself?
No, I did not discuss it with the board.
The boards, I believe, vice chair sent an email to me, and I said the commission's having these conversations at these point in time. So they'll be more than glad to listen or hear from you. I don't know if you heard from them. But that we've let them know that it's happening. Just haven't heard anything.
I mentioned that only because I think it's important to get feedback, if there is any, on how they feel about this.
And look, it's a resolution. So if something's not working or something needs to be tweaked or changed, one meeting, easy to do.
Right. It's a story.
Oh, this looks pretty comprehensive to me. And what I really like is it gives us options. So you're not stuck with one thing. If it turns out it doesn't work quite so well, you can maneuver around it. So
Right.
I like that.
Well, no, once we start it, We'll see how it works. Hopefully it all work exactly as planned.
So just two questions. Number 6 on page 3, the training on an annual
Yes.
basis.
Yes,
So if someone comes on the committee, a new hire, and it's out of sync on the annual, how would that, should we add that an annual or upon hire?
that is,
If early-
well, we'll do it at least on an annual basis. What I do personally, generally, boards that I represent is when somebody new comes on,
Okay.
I'll do a little
Right.
orientation session and
Right.
so it's not spelled out in the resolution. I could change it to spell that out, but I think that's an excellent point.
And the other one is just a miscellaneous observation. Under section of the code 2-12, it applies, that's the general applicability. It indicates the code enforcement officer can refer violations to the court. Now, even though the code had mentions of the special masters, that language was omitted. Do you think it's important to put that in?
So that you always have the option to take it to court. If you want to file, you can always file a code enforcement action in the court system. It's not very cost effective. Nobody really does it, but you always can. And if you have, and there are some cases where you'll have a serious violation where you might want to seek an injunction or something like that. This doesn't in no way precludes the town from pursuing that avenue.
Yes, no, I realize.
Oh,
I
okay.
just meant just meant as the language.
Oh, I mean, that's,
It's
I don't think it's necessary,
Okay.
but I think.
okay. But I do support this. I think it is, we've heard, it's an effective way of dealing with code enforcement. And it covers us although we do have training mentioned in the code already, this is, it's the more specificity. I mean, annual basis, we're more aware of it on the commission. And hopefully we'll have more input into that.
Right. And
as well
I assume we're
as-
going to have new members shortly, so we'll definitely
Mhm.
schedule it for that.
And also I think I heard you say if there's not a quorum, the lesser, the magistrate can handle them. So we don't have the people have nothing to come back.
Right.
That's-
We
that's
need the
important.
flexibility.
Yes,
The
yes.
town definitely needs flexibility because things happen. And sometimes the magistrate will have a conflict. It happens. I'm a magistrate in another jurisdiction. So there are some cases where conflicts arise. So we could always switch back and forth as need be.
Mhm.
Good. Group.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it covers all the bases. I like Commissioner Goldberg's suggestion about, as people come on board, there would be some orientation to fill the gap in between the annual changes.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
agree.
I really like the flexibility of being able to do one or the other as the need arises. I like the training. So I'm in favor with the way that it is. And like you said, if we have to we'll see how it goes. And if we need to make changes,
Exactly.
we can make the changes. So any public comments on this item? No. Okay, well, if there are no public comments, can I have a motion?
I move we approve resolution number 2024-019.
I second it.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Yes.
And Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, excellent. Moving on to town commission comments. Commissioner Goldberg, you have anything?
Well, I think that it's very important what we did with the non-union employees today. So I'm really very happy that we did that, that we're staying competitive, even if it's in the first quarter. It compares with our surrounding comparable towns and cities. So that's terrific. And I like very much what we've done with regard to the code enforcement. Having the magistrate here, and that protects everyone in the town. Because if there's a code violation and we can't make a quorum, it's not the way we want to do business. So we're operating A+. And I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad with the non-union employees. We take care of our employees to keep them. I know I come from New York and people change constantly. They see this paying more money, they go. Benefits is very important too. Also, I just hope everybody's enjoying their summer and I'm looking forward for the 75th. I can't wait.
Other than to echo what's already been said, I have nothing specific. Thank you.
I also echo, however, I'd just like to add that the whole question of the electric vehicles and batteries, and it's all a very hot topic, and I know that the fire department is working on that. My condo put in some rules that we felt was right for us, and we're working with Matt, and so hopefully they'll come out with some official guidelines and rules for everyone. Quick question. I understand there may have been a story coming up on that in the next edition of the newspaper. Is that going to happen? Thank you.
That's for sure.
I had a question that training, do we have training for the Board of Adjustment and Appeals? Is it necessary? Like, should we implement something like that?
Probably not a bad idea. At least, on an annual basis. And because that also is a quasi judicial board. So you have the issue of ex parte communications, you have sunshine law, all that kind of stuff. So we can start doing it. It's probably a good idea on an annual basis to do it for all the boards, but especially the quasi judicial boards
Right. So
and planning board as well.
that's a recommendation I have, is to implement.
Well, yeah, that's true. I have done it on a couple of them as we've been going along, but we can be a little more formalized with our
Could we
schedule.
formalize it?
Yes.
Maybe put it in
Sure.
in language.
Sure, I'll work with, we'll come up with a schedule.
It probably just protects us too, right? If we have it
Absolutely.
as part of our policies that we do training, so.
And then even maybe Mark back there in the IT room can film it and then we can air it. So you don't.
Yeah.
How
Ah,
about that?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah, I was
better.
gonna say
Look,
that.
we're so
YouTube-
technologically
YouTube
advanced
it.
here. I like that.
That's a
Yeah.
very good idea. So,
It is an excellent idea, yeah.
so Ms. Mayor, what you're suggesting, which I would greatly appreciate, would be
Yeah.
every board that we have.
Well, at least definitely the Code Enforcement Board and the Board of Adjustment
Yeah.
Appeals. I mean, for sure, those two. I mean,
And planning board.
and Planning Board. Yeah. I mean, does the Natural Preservation Board need that?
I
Probably
did
not,
do one
but-
at Natural Preservation
yeah.
probably about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago to kind of go over sunshine law and that kind of stuff. But
I mean, all the boards is fine. I mean, I'm fine with all the other boards, just definitely the.
no, I
guess,
agree. The
yeah,
quasi
maybe
judicial one.
maybe I would add Planning Board to that, for those two additional boards. I think we should formalize it in a resolution or whatever the right way is, so that it's part of our policies and procedures or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that's all comments I had. Town attorney.
No, ma'am, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Town manager.
I guess I'll pick up on the 75th anniversary. So we've reached out to the group. So we're going to hopefully get a meeting here in the next couple of weeks to kind of kick off the group. Just so those that are watching that are participating, we'll do a lot of the legwork. Don't feel you're coming into this from, without any support. So staff will be here to bring options, vet things out, keep it all moving. Again, the committee is really to give us guidance and some direction. So we're not missing the mark or making sure we're hitting all the topics. So once we get that going, we'll move. Now we've looked into some of the more high expense items, which are for your fiscally conservative manager, kind of expensive. That being fireworks and drone shows are quite extensive and expensive, but we'll present it to the committee so they could see the numbers on that. But again, we're going to get the group together and have, all those events going, and get them planned. And again, we could stagger them. It might be something we consider. So it's a season long celebration. Because originally we were like, how compressed do we want to have 3 or 4 events? Or do we want to have them spread out a little bit through season, give other people more opportunity to engage the community? Those are conversations we're looking to have. Do we want to, compress it to a long weekend, or do we want to make it a seasonal celebration where we go from, mingle jingle to something in February, March timeframe? So those are things we'll have to take a look at and report back and what the costs are. But it's going to be exciting. It'll be a good time. We have a lot of opportunity now, with the fire department here. the partnership that we have with St. Lucie Church. I mean, that's fabulous that's strong. So we have venues, we have all the community partners, not that we have a lot of community, but the community partners are engaged. This is good. So we should be able to do some really marvelous things here on our 75th anniversary.
Do we have it in the budget? Do we have some number? Okay,
We have room in the budget. I have room in the budget in my mind. Probably not. I know. Thanks, Hartman. So, but I'm sure the group will push my number and we'll go from there, you know?
Okay.
So we'll see what it looks like. And that's part of the group too, is to start scoping what that's going to look like. 'Cause our success in our previous events is public participation is growing. So I would expect on the 75th anniversary, those numbers are going to be really significant. So.
Are we looking at sponsorships?
Great.
Yes.
Always.
Foundations.
That is not my strong suit. So on my self-evaluation, development is not my strength. So hopefully I'm learning from one of the best. So we'll learn how to, procure sponsorships and development within the community or adjacent areas, what that looks like, how to do that. I spent a long time with my previous community that never wanted to do that because they didn't want potential conflict. But for a 75th anniversary, it does make sense on some of these bigger events to have potential partners and sponsors.
I would think the Sands might want to be one of the sponsors. And plus,
That is a community partner we haven't engaged, and how we engage them to be part of it. We'll have to figure that out. Maybe we do something there, a smaller event there, and have a multitude of events for different types of community member. Maybe some don't like the big crowded mingle jingle and want something a little more intimate and smaller, or don't like to do things in the evening, want to do things in the morning, pancake breakfast or, mimosas with the fire chief, you could do these things. And we could be very creative and go beyond the typical, pancakes, right? You could do something, be a little more creative and engage a different type of crowd. And maybe I'll learn what fundraising or development looks like and how we can put that structure in place moving forward too.
So one tidbit of feedback I did get from more than one resident is concern over the firework. If we do fireworks, the impact on pets and stuff. So just to make sure the committee discusses the pros
And
and
there's different
cons
sizes
of
and
that.
scopes and
Okay,
scales.
right.
The drone was really cool, but woo.
What is, what, I'm not even
Was it
familiar.
$40,000?
The drone shows, they're cool.
What is a
I
drone
like so,
show?
Bobby.
Their bare minimum is like 40 grand.
But
to
what
talk.
is that? I don't even know what that is.
But they can go and take drones that light up in all these different colors and they can make, they do
Like
like a whole,
like fireworks.
show. They can put our logo up in color over the crowd. They could do a lot of really, but they need
There's some cool stuff online.
250 is what they said, or 40 or something like, but how many?
It's about 200 drones, like the minimum they recommend for a show.
Wow.
And for that, it was at least 40 grand, and it really wasn't that impressive.
I mean, so you
Oh,
can
that
talk
was
that it
minimal.
grows. Like I said, the conversation starts at 40. So I mean,
Okay.
based on knowing many of the people in the community, our tastes are probably double that what we
Right.
want to see. So we'll have to take a look at all those options and what's out there.
Oh,
Maybe
wow.
somebody's got something else like, oh, you should do X or Y or, there's a whole bunch of different, we just need to come together as a group and say, do we like this or this?
Mhm.
And then we'll hit the ground running and do all the legwork, get it all in place. Especially if we're using, the hard part's always getting a venue. Father Horgan's been beautiful. He's given, the facilities are available. So we've got a big facility in center of town. The fire station we have available as needed. So, I mean, we've got space to do some neat stuff and hopefully we can, get that going for our diamond anniversary and handouts for the community, things to be memorialized. I think it'd be cool. We do some really neat stuff.
Very exciting.
Well, it'll be very exciting to be
Yes.
at that meeting,
Yeah, very exciting.
to share ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after the meeting gets done, Commissioner Peters will report back to the group and go from there.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
I think fireworks are just as much or even more than that.
I mean, it is. I think that's what, I know Skender, he's not here today, but he was looking into it. He moonlights for a fireworks company and he says, it's, 90 seconds is like 25, 30 grand. And I was like, woo.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's numbers I did not expect. But he's looking at, is there something smaller in scale that could be beautiful but smaller for the space, things like that. So.
You can get a decent one for about, it's about 50 grand though. North Palm Beach does it every year for July 4th. They budget about 50.
They do it at the
Country
golf
club,
course. Yeah,
yeah.
at the golf course. Yeah. So they have space, like an open space.
Right.
Here, we'd have to either get barges or I don't know where you
Well,
I
people
don't want to
do,
have it like it's shooting at condos and stuff. Inside the building.
people do it here because I see them every year at July 4th and I see them on New Year's Eve. I just look out the window and they're all over, coming from right here. So, and I don't think all of these houses are spending
So we're gonna
$40,000.
Right, so we'll get the idea, that's what we're trying to get more information. So we had the first meeting, we could say, here's your like scale of options, is it really something
And
we
they
want?
do set them off in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, Pompano and Deerfield, they just have barges
Yeah,
right by their piers. They don't even do them on their piers. They don't want to damage it,
Mhm.
do it on a barge.
So we'll look, all that's gonna be on the table, talk
Yeah.
about and what we want to do with it, and you guys give me the thumbs up, thumbs down, or the group the thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll make it happen. That's all I got.
Okay.
We have a few announcements, some board vacancies, Board of Adjustment and Appeals. We have one vacancy, and the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board, we have a vacancy. Some upcoming meetings and events. So we do have a code enforcement meeting, so August 13th. So the changes that we made are effective immediately, right? But,
The resolution is effective immediately. It's going to take a little while to
Okay.
implement, but
okay, so that'll be just a regular code enforcement.
I
Okay.
believe we have four of the 7 available.
Yes, 4.
So it could be close, but I think we'll be okay.
Okay,
September gets really
okay.
tight.
I think there are only 2 things on the agenda.
Yep.
It's really small.
Okay. We have, on August 20th, we have the primary election day. So town hall is closed. We have canceled the meeting for August 22nd for the town commission meeting, and we resume September 3rd. We will have a meeting of the town commission at 1:30, and we actually have 2 that day because of the budget hearing. So we would have a second meeting on September 3rd at 5:01 PM, which will probably last until 5:02 PM. That's usually a pretty quick meeting, but there are 2 meetings that day. And there are no board action reports. And if that's it, we can adjourn.
Yes.
Okay, everyone, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
2:27, we're adjourned.